I'm really excited to introduce our speaker this morning. He's been standing with 10 shows, ready to go. Alison and I met a few months back. We started coming to Creative Mornings pretty regularly, which is really cool to be part of the community and also get to share her story this morning, and spent a couple hours together in the last few weeks talking about all of the amazing things you've done in your life and career and the things you're working on. So really excited. I'm not going to spoil anything in case you read her bio, but really excited to welcome Alison to the stage. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you. So I'm walking the Appalachian Trail in the worst possible season in memory. I mean, it's not just rain, right? It's unseasonable rain. It's epic rain. It's biblical rain. And this is Maine. Okay, so there's 14 states on the Appalachian Trail, and Maine is the hardest. That's called a bog board, by the way. Would you step on that? I had to get through somehow. Had the trail as a stream. And oftentimes you're walking through what's called the green tunnel. You're in the forest most of the time until you climb and climb and climb and go to the view. Of course, this is like a hypothermia-inducing kind of view, and you're not going to stop anyway because you can't see anything. Now, as I'm coming down from this, I see a sign that says Ford ahead. Ford coming up. A ford means it's not a bridge, right? It means that you got to cross it. Now, this is the Pleasant River. Wasn't that pleasant that day? All that rain made it big. This is the actual crossing of the river. It looks actually kind of easy. You could rock hop it, right? But it's deep and it's fast moving and it's confusing to see. And I needed to go across this, and there was things that were in my mind I was curious about. I was getting kind of grounded as we were in Callie's meditation moment or mindfulness moment. I was thinking, I need to get across this safely. I need to be on the other side, not fall, pay attention, be careful. But there was another thing that was in my mind too when I was here. It was like, when you listen to AM radio and there's an announcer, sort of announcing the baseball game usually is what it is. I mean, I'm not really that into baseball, but I love listening to those because they bring you into this moment. They narrate it and there's sound happening, but you don't see anything, although you kind of see it in your mind's eye, kind of like this.
That initial move, stepping into the water, terrified me because the water was so high. So maybe I can approach from the other side to get in. This requires climbing up on top of a boulder and then sort of letting myself in slowly, like going into the deep end of a pool. It's really deep, but right here is an eddy and the water isn't fast. I reach high for the rope, and once I have it in hand, I slowly move forward to the rocks, where the water is moving faster. Once I reach them, I turn sideways and crab myself, bracing against the rocks as the current bashes at me. I slide one foot over the other and jam it against the rock. As I'm moving, one foot gets stuck. Very carefully, leaning against those rocks and holding onto the rope, I unwedge my foot.
I made it. Oh my God.
When I reach the other side, a hermit thrush sings its elegant, wispy, two-toned song. Running through my head is this saying about hiking. You're only passing through. Each moment I experience will literally be behind me. It's this wondrous creation and life force around me as I pass through that provides meaning and the reason I hike. It might even be the reason I live.
Ooh, we're getting kind of deep here. So this commentator, right, is giving you the blow by blow. Of course, it's me talking later after it happened. of what's happening, and it unspools into questions, into perspective, into what's happening in this moment. I do want to make a note here that these ropes that were put up, or rope, I guess it is, there's kind of two there. I was told later, do not trust them. Shit. So the subject for this meeting today is perspective. And getting to that perspective of we're just passing through, we're just here temporarily, this idea of kind of mindfulness, of groundedness, of maybe an attitude of gratitude, whatever way you want to describe it, is something that took me some time to get to. And so what I want to talk about today, I want to unpack how my perspective changed, not only in my artwork, but also in my life and how I approached life. I should say that my art form is audio narrative. That's what I call it. So it's personal essay, this kind of AM sports radio commentator, with found sound kind of coming together to create sort of the public radio sound of being there. Okay. So a lot of you came today because you wanted to hear a professional backpacker speak. The blissful hiker, who is the solo female, middle-aged, titanium-reinforced, neurological movement disorder manager, cancer thriver, and long-distance backpacker, blissful hiker. So Blissful got a very early start hiking along, and this picture makes me think of something that John Muir said. He did not like the word hike. He liked the word saunter. Saunter to the Holy Land, this idea that things are reverent. I wonder if he liked the word strut, to be honest. So the outdoors, I didn't realize you could do a Farrah Fawcett and Dorothy Hamill sort of hairstyle all at once. My father took me to Yosemite when I was 13 years old, and I thought, how can a place like this exist without my knowing it? And I was caught, this whole bug of walking. Walking is actually the earliest memory for me of the power of taking you somewhere, the groundedness, the working out of problems, the getting yourself in shape. It's a 16-year-old blissful hiker. She's doing pretty good. But I listened to a little bit too much Jethro Tull, and I picked up a flute when I was a teenager. And I had these two things going, the kind of outdoorsy gal, but the musician. So I want to ask a question here. How many of you make something as your art? I mean, it could be an audio narrative or visual art, clay, painting, writing. Yeah, you make things. How many of you are performers? Yeah. So I don't want to make a statement that's just a blanket statement, but in some ways I feel like our brains are slightly different. Performers are making something in time that's ephemeral, that is like this passing through kind of perspective. It's something that's going to just go and be gone. I mean, obviously, if it's recorded, that's one thing. And it's also quite physical. The most physical performer I know in the world is, or who's no longer in the world, is this man. Does anyone know who that is? Whoever saw Bradley Cooper? It's Leonard Bernstein. And that's me, right there. At the end of the film, they show a real Leonard Bernstein at Tanglewood, and this, I was weeping because it's in the late 80s, early 90s, I can't remember the year. And he's so physical. We were playing The Rite of Spring. It's one of those things, like they say, if you remember the 60s, you weren't there. If you remember this, it was so exciting. I mean, everyone had to have sex after that. It was just like, ah! If anyone knows Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. But Koussevitzky, the famous conductor of the Boston Symphony, had borrowed it in 4, the sacrificial dance, which was insane. And of course, Bernstein did just that, but his hips went in the other beat. It was a very exciting time. So I did a lot of things. Now we're getting into the 90s hairstyle. I know, I thought one day there would be people cheering.
Saluting.
So I played with the Boston Symphony, I played with the Atlanta Symphony, I made recordings, I toured, I did a lot of things with this career. This was one of the final things I did in going to Argentina to work with musicians, and I made a recording of Argentine music. Do you want to hear a little bit of flute playing? Astor Piazzolla. Astor Piazzolla, Fuga e Misterio, and arranged for flute and piano by Alison Young. This is the final project I did. One day, about 25 years ago, I picked up my flute, and I couldn't remember where to put my hands. I developed a neurological condition called focal dystonia, or musician's dystonia. It's related to Parkinson's. And it's like a blank space in your brain of something you had done so easily for so long. It was gone. I mean, imagine coming up to someone and saying, "Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm going to shake your hand," and not remembering how to put your hand out. So that time really sucked in my life. I didn't know what I was gonna do. And I had to give up. I tried to rebuild the flute, blah, blah, blah. Nothing worked. And I remembered something that my great-grandma Emma used to say. Everybody would refer to her. I never met her. She has an interesting hairstyle too. That's the 1880s. She used to say, "Life may be short, but it's also wide." So at the shittiest time of your life, it's not just like, losing your identity. Playing the flute was the music of my soul. It was the way I expressed myself. It was something I didn't understand why I had this talent, this skill, and then why did it disappear? So of course I went to trail to figure things out, to get grounded, to release my sorrow, to figure out what I was going to do next. And it was funny because here I started to hear things in a certain way. I heard the way my feet made a sound on the rock. I heard the different birds. I heard the different sounds of wind. It calmed me. And I also had a perspective change in this idea that you want to cultivate curiosity over certainty, because certainty, does it really exist? And I did that, and I fell into another career, radio. I just happened to come home and wanted to have lunch with somebody and say, what am I going to do? You have any ideas? And he happened to be the president of KUHF, Houston Public Media, just a friend of mine. And he came and he said, "Could you read this thing?" I remember it was about chocolate. And I was like, "Chocolate? It's like you reading Tom doing the manifesto." Suddenly there was the voice, and there was the timing and the performance. So he offered me a job. And it was so interesting because it was a completely different kind of thing. That's why I asked the question about creating something that's sort of solid and performing. I was suddenly combining these. So there was the kind of live aspect. I mean, radio is very much like, the time's going down, boom, you got to talk right then. You better say something intelligent and not have any dead air. So there's that kind of performance aspect, but there was also making things. So when I was in Houston, they had a program called The Front Row. It was a 2-hour arts program every day. That's 10 hours of content. And I could read really fast, so they'd be like, "Oh, John Updike's coming tomorrow for an interview. Here's his new book." And I was a little bit of an overachiever, and I'm like writing questions, So I was a little bit the Terry Gross of South Texas for a while. But then eventually I came up here to Minnesota. That's why I'm here. I worked at American Public Media for 13 years as a host. This is the St. Olaf Christmas Festival. Any of you go to St. Olaf College? Yeah, it's very, very reverent. We call it the cherished tradition. Try to say that 10 times fast. So all of these different aspects came together for me of performative stuff, things happening in time, and starting to do this idea of almost like a collage. Collected sounds might be music, they might be someone else's voice, but also my voice, and putting things together in time. Here's an example of an organization you might recognize.
This is the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra live in concert from the Ordway Concert Hall in downtown St. Paul. I'm Alison Young.
The Emperor begins with a kind of call to action, something quite different from a normal concerto. It begins with a series of cadenzas.
Yeah, it takes art and artwork, you know, it takes kind of timing, it takes thought to make sure those posts happen in the right place. I mean, we're sitting there going, okay, it has to be 1 second this way, 1 second that way. You know how it is as a creative artist. But then when people hear it, it just sounds natural. Fun time, loved what I did there. But very much like the flute, I got into this kind of, my perspective was like, do more, succeed more, get a lot. And that started to cause burnout. I mean, I didn't mention this when I was talking about flute, but there's this attitude of you're only as good as your last performance. Has anybody ever heard that before? We talk about pressure. You know, and in radio, it's like it happened yesterday. Nobody's even thinking about it. Sometimes it's on the internet, but basically it's gone. So there was this intense kind of pressure to be good, to do well at that. And all along, I was still hiking. I just couldn't get this out of my system. So every vacation, I was out exploring, hearing new sounds, grounding myself, kind of finding the answers, wondering why I was burning out on something I love to do. This is in the Ukalamba, Drakensberg in South Africa. So I went to pretty weird places. This is the Torres del Paine in South Chile. And so I'm thinking I'm kind of a weirdo, these things that I love to do together, until I discovered something that amazed me. I was just reading about composers and other creatives, and I found that people used the outdoors, walking intentionally, on purpose, to capture the muse. So a lot of artists did that, but in music, it was Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, Erik Satie, who would deliberately miss the train for his 6-mile walk home, just so he could kind of wander. So whenever you hear that, bum, da, da, dee, da, da, dee, da, 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 you can just see the guy kind of like floating through the Parisian streets. And I found this fascinating. This is Gustav Mahler, if you're familiar with his music. He called them composing walks. It was like, it's noon, lunchtime, and we go outside. 3-hour walk. And then the things would come to him. So they didn't really understand why scientifically this worked. I'm gonna have to read this because I can't remember the whole thing. But this is the science. Impact-related retrograde. Okay, so what this means physically, when we walk, especially if we saunter or strut rather than hike, the blood synchronizes from the heart to the stride rate and sends it to the brain. We literally massage our thoughts. And I thought, yes, it's okay. I can be a hiker, I can be a musician, I can be a creative, all these things can come together. So I was very excited about this discovery. And when we moved, my husband and I moved to Minnesota, both of us worked at Minnesota Public Radio. We deliberately got a house 2 miles from work so that we would walk every day. We wanted to freak out our relatives in Texas by, walking on days like this. And all of this impact-related retrograde was getting creative juices going to my brain. And I was like, wow, I could do something with this performance thing. I mean, I can't play flute worth shit, but I could come to Jesus in whole notes, but I can do something more creative. And all this walking down the hill, doing my shift, walking back up the hill, I came up with the big idea. So the big idea, the crazy idea, was, all right, I've been hiking these 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there, saving up vacation, working really hard on weekends so I could do 4 weeks in Africa. And I'm like, I want to do a long through hike. So if you want to do the Appalachian Trail or something, right, it takes months. It's not just like on vacation. You have to quit your job or have a patron, be independently wealthy, retired, whatever. And I was determined. I'm like, I couldn't get it out of my mind. And so this was another perspective changing moment, huge change in my mind, because I realized I wanted more than what I was doing then at that moment to hike and to try this thing. Then I wanted to stay where I was. And there was actually a pretty good reason for it, because remember great-grandma Emma, and her life is short, but it's also wide. Great-grandma Emma, Grandma Louise, Mother Joyce, me, comes right down the line. Debilitating arthritis, breast cancer. It was coming for me. So I thought, well, shit then. Life is short and time is running out. And I need to do this thing. So I asked for a leave of absence. I mean, they made me wait a year, and then they were kind of cagey, but they finally gave it to me. Leave of absence, 5 months off my job, not being paid, to go and walk a trail. I wasn't going to do the Appalachian Trail. Are you kidding me? This is the one chance in my life. I was going to go to New Zealand. Hell yeah. I went to New Zealand to walk the long trail. It's a 2,000-mile, Te Araroa is what it's called. But there was one other problem too, is, I'm a creative, I was broke. And I had one thing of value that I could sell to get the money that I needed to do this trail. And it happened to be worth exactly the amount I needed, which was kind of like, woo, magic. After I had to leave the flute, I sold my music, I got rid of everything, but I couldn't part with my professional instrument. What if there was a cure, And it sat in the closet, and I thought, if I sell my flute, I'll have the money. And I did it. And I went. And I walked the Te Araroa. That's me, I was alone a lot. And I had harder rivers to cross, way harder rivers to cross, death-defying rivers. I had transformative kind of light and groundedness experiences. I also had a lot of great sound to collect. Those are the sand flies. Isn't that attractive? So I was right that time was running out. I was right. I came home, and I didn't expect this. NPR said, all right, we're going to demote you to on-call. So I did one overnight at NPR, and I said, no, I don't think so. I can't do this. And it was kind of depressing. I came home and was like, man, what am I going to do now? It wasn't quite the same as losing my flute. I knew I could get another job or I could do something, but it was shocking. I'd expected to work. And my husband said to me, after being gone for 5 months, he said, you need to just get back on trail. You need to go back on trail to assuage your sorrow, to get a new perspective, to figure out what to do. And I said, are you telling me to leave for another 5 months? Yes, Allison, please leave. And this is, talk about perspective. I was like, what will people think? I mean, I've been gone. How dare I live my life? He said, Allison, you are 100% boss free. And he was right. So I went on another hike, the Pacific Crest Trail. It's longer, 2,600 miles. And it was amazing. So let's come back to the present day. That's another story you can read on my website, all right? It's amazing. I come home really renewed from that. The Te Araroa in New Zealand was my first hike. It was my first try. There was all the challenges. The Pacific Crest Trail, I was becoming like a pro, and I was feeling good, and it was easier in a lot of ways, and it's in our own country. And I didn't expect to walk the whole thing, but I did it. But when I came home, the shit really hit the fan because COVID hit, right? Richard and I built a voice studio for me to do voiceover, right? And also to do these audio narratives. It's a professional studio, it's like in our house. We literally opened the doors and hung out a shingle when they said lockdown, which was actually good because I could do everything, remotely. It was fantastic. But I also got debilitating arthritis. That's why I'm titanium reinforced. These are fake. And I got cancer. So this is last spring. We're coming to the present. I was offered an artist in residence, a residency, I guess, at the Porcupine Mountains Wilderness in Michigan. It's amazing. All of you should apply. It's not money, but it's like a gorgeous place to be. I've had a biopsy, I've had a lumpectomy. We don't know what it is, we don't know how bad it is. I'm scared out of my mind, and I'm not gonna miss this for the world. And what was very strange about going to the Porcupine Mountains to make my audio narrative is I didn't have to do anything. I had to make the audio narrative, I had to collect sound, but I didn't need to hike and do big miles and carry 25 pounds. I just needed to sit here and listen to the waterfall. To just kind of look at the view and hear the birds and let nature speak to me. So I learned this kind of new perspective of, rather than carpe diem, sort of let the day unfold. Let it tell you what it is. And my artwork changed too. I'm going to give you a little tiny excerpt of what I made for the Porkies.
Spring is like a glimpse into heaven and offers us a chance to be renewed. It teaches us about life's insatiable and insistent demand that we start over each year and open ourselves to the wonder of hope. But these moments, like all of life, are fleeting and brief. They're so transitory, we could almost miss them if we're not fully present.
Yeah, it sounds like I know my death is imminent. It's pretty heavy-duty stuff, but it was amazing to have that experience. So I'm going to leave with you some of these thoughts about perspective and about how you can use it in your work and maybe in how you approach life. I mean, life can often be as shitty as walking the mud in New Zealand. We're laughing, though.
Serious business.
Or it can be where you start a trail. This is day 2. Day 1, of course, was sunny because they wanted me to start, right? But day 2 turned to shit. And you have to hike 30 miles out of the way, the wrong direction, to start the trail. So life can sometimes be like this, like just, yeah, you got to work through that stuff. But there's some things you can take to it that I mentioned. You can let the day unfold rather than grab at it. You can surrender to what it wants to tell you. I'm a type A personality. I make plans, I have goals, I certainly dream. But there's something magical in noticing, oh, wait, there's actually another way to go this way, or there's something different to do, or maybe if I just pull back. And also I mentioned this idea of curiosity as opposed to certainty. The older I get, the more powerful that is for me, because I mean, the only thing that is certain, I don't want to say it's too depressing, right? But, you know, taxes, and it's coming up. And then the other one that starts with a D that I won't mention. So curiosity can be an amazingly powerful thing when you just open up to the experience. And finally, as Kaylee did so beautifully, this idea of noticing. Hear things, bring it in, notice, and have that sort of build your creativity, build your ideas, build your sense of groundedness, because sometimes exactly what you're looking for is just right there in front of you. Thank you.